Welcome to Pod. Oh, I got a little bit of. I feel like I went into the red there. Did I blow out the? I should turn my input down. Welcome to Podcrushed. I am
Welcome.
joined by only half of my co-hosts today.
That's right.
Sophie and sorry. Or no, I should have let the audience guess. Which co-host do you think I'm joined by? If you're not watching,
They
video,
probably would
of
have guessed
course.
Nava, the more industrious. But it's me. You're stuck with me.
It's yeah, and you know what? You really got through it too, because you're sick. I could even tell just a little bit
Oh
today. Now, I
my
don't want to make you
gosh.
self-conscious, but
I
you
am the sickest I've ever been, I think.
really.
Yeah, I was not sure I would make it today, but I got through it. And actually Eiza was so lovely. She was so talkative and told so many stories that she made it easy. Thank God.
Yeah, the moment I started doing research on her, I was like, "Oh, this is going to be an easy one," because she has. I mean, specifically starting at 12, she has a very
Yeah.
rich life story. So you know what? You guys don't want to hear more of us speaking unless you do.
We can go for hours.
Yeah. The way the blood drained from your face as you said that, Soph, I feel like.
But we won't, right? You could tell I was sick. At what point could you tell that I was sick? As
it
soon
was
as I
like
got
halfway
on?
through.
Oh, okay.
No. It was halfway through. It was
Okay.
about halfway through. I was just like, oh, because you're pretty peppy.
Yeah.
You are pretty peppy, and you just didn't have it today.
No.
Just-
Parenting yesterday, there was a moment where I was in like the dark room. Anais was with me on the bed. She's like trying to get me to play. All I can
Yeah,
muster is
yeah.
like holding up
Yeah.
the book for her, and I've memorized it by now, so I'm reading it.
So you just say, yeah. Do you remember when I don't know why I remember this, but there was something about, I think I was sick and Boone was sick and you were like, oh, it must have been so hard. And I was like, actually, just wait until you have to parent while you're sick and the child is not.
Oh yeah.
That's like a different
Yeah.
thing, because you're having to, yeah, there's just different stakes,
Yeah.
different
Oh my
stakes.
gosh. Anyway, enough about this.
And that's enough about us and parenthood. Let's go on to our very talented guest. Today we have the incomparable Eiza González, who you probably know from Netflix, from Netflix's Three Body Problem. It was pretty big. It was pretty big. Listen, coming from a big Netflix show, I think I know when a Netflix show is big. And Three Body Problem was Three Body big. All right. She's also been in major motion pictures like Baby Driver and franchises like Hobbs and Shaw, which is the Fast and Furious universe. Godzilla vs. Kong, her newest film, is a real interesting, strange science fiction horror film from incredible music producer Flying Lotus. The film is called Ash. She plays a stranded and confused astronaut. And I won't say anything else, because if you start from the beginning, you're going to learn so much. It's a mysterious thriller horror ride. Eiza was a joy to talk to. You're going to love this one. Don't go anywhere. Welcome to Podcrushed. We're your hosts. I'm Penn,
I'm Nava.
And I'm Sophie. And I think we would have been your middle school besties.
playing Silent Hill together in the dark.
Peeing our pants.
I don't like it, but we're going to use it. Cut. So 12 for you was, I mean, as far as we can tell, you've spoken emphatically and with a lot of vulnerability and strength about this time. Obviously, your father passed. That's an enormous. I can't think of anything that could characterize and define a period of life more. So I just want to acknowledge that we're aware.
Yeah.
I would love to start with a snapshot of 12-year-old Eiza to get a sense of what quote unquote normal life had been like, might have been like before the two massive pillars of like grief and acting took you in such a different direction.
I think about it now as in my 30s, and I really have so much admiration for that little girl. I really feel like I'm so much more fragile now than I was then. And I think about that 12-year-old girl in that way because it was traumatizing. I mean, imagine my father passed 10 days after my birthday, like exactly
Wow.
10 days.
Wow.
Yeah. And there's so many different ways to die. And there's no right or wrong. There's not one that hurts less than another, but they all have different impacts and they sort of build you in a complete different way. People that, have long lasting illnesses and what that causes to the people around them, or sudden deaths, which is what happened to me, and what that does to the electricity of your brain. And especially as a non-developed brain, as a child, your brain as an adult it doesn't stop developing until you're like in your mid 20s. And so imagine you're in the middle of like building this tissue in your brain and you just get a shot of electricity and adrenaline to your brain. And I've been working a lot with Dr. Amen, who specializes in neuroscience, and I've been studying my brain quite a lot because in that period of my life, I just was obviously, especially this is like early 2000s. And so like 2001. And it was all about, you got to go to therapy. And you were just thrown into therapy and you're just not ready for therapy yet. You've not done grieving. My hormones are all over the place. My arm's longer than the other. I have no clue who I am. I got no sense of my body, who I am. My identity is completely lost. And one big pillar of my life was my father, and my identity was really tied to his identity. And so that was completely removed. And then I'm like crazy, insane human being. And I'm like, let's add to this fame and the industry and working insane amount of hours. And basically, when you're on these TV shows, we've all experienced it in a shape or form. You're exploited. You're not sleeping. You're not resting. And I was on the go. I felt like Hannah Montana in that sense. I was like living two lives because I was really grieving, like deeply. I was deeply grieving.
Yeah. When I found this out, that you not only had this, I mean, like just life altering, landscape shifting event of losing your father, you then also found both a passion and then this sort of like what it sounds like, as a coping mechanism, or, and I don't mean that in a negative way. It's just like everybody needs a coping mechanism. And in fact, career is often one of the most famous ones people turn to, so there's no judgment there. But so you're clearly very conscious of it now.
Yeah.
What was the way you saw it back then?
I didn't see it at all. And it was so nuanced, my experience, because first of all, my father passed in a motorcycle accident and he slipped and broke his neck, and it was immediate and died. And the hard part of that was my biggest passion was motorcycles. And
what?
Yeah, I used
Really?
to
At
run
12?
yeah, I was trained since I started really young. My father
Wait, what?
ran motorcycles professionally. Yeah.
I
Just
did
a lot
not
of people don't know
realize
this.
that.
Yeah.
I did
Amazing.
not know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So my
Wow.
father and I's sort of bonding thing was adrenaline. And so I started with four-wheelers when I was little, and then I had a dirt bike, and then I started moving into sport bikes. And
Wait,
around
what?
that
I'm
age,
sorry.
I was doing
This is like such a.
it's
This
insane.
feels like such a curveball. I mean,
Yeah.
you have so many facets to your youth. Okay, I'm sorry. Keep going.
I know it's like really jarring when people are like, wait, what? Because I feel like it doesn't connect, and there's like a disconnect of how people perceive me versus who I really am.
Yeah.
And I was I was an adrenaline junkie, and so was my brother, my dad, and I. And so the funny part is my mom was a horseback rider, and so my brother sort of skewed towards the horseback riding, and I skewed into the running and motorcycles and
Okay.
competing. And so he was training me to be a professional, like really like do it for a living.
Wow.
And so when he died in the motorcycle, all of a sudden there was this confusion of the thing that I loved the most, I now hated the most. And this resentment to something that was so um ingrained in me. And now I had to sort of take it out of myself and think about my mother and not do it anymore for my mother's peace. And then thinking about my family members and simultaneously while finding a new passion. And I think that's how acting came in, because
Mm.
the one passion died with my father, and
Mm.
there was a kind of a hole left in there, and a lot of energy and anxiety and fear and loss of who I was. My identity was sort of lost. And while simultaneously transitioning into another identity, which is becoming a woman. And it was
Mm.
terrifying. It was really terrifying. And I found so much solace the moment that I came across acting, because I'd always been sort of creative, but I never really knew where. Like, I love painting, I paint, and I used to sketch quite a lot. I was really into anime when I was young. And so I do tons of anime. And I was always kind of quirky and weird, but I never thought of acting. It was more singing. And then I was transferred after my father's passing to a different school, just to kind of give me a different kind of reset. And I was in a really very, very harsh school, like very focused in education. It was taxing for me. I wasn't mentally there. And I was coping with it too. So I was having a lot of like eating disorders. I was really dealing with it. I gained so much weight because I was so depressed, and I was eating my feelings constantly. So then I went into puberty. And so now I'm like, puberty, I'm getting weight, I'm depressed, I'm dealing with it. It was
It's a
wild.
lot.
I don't know who I am. I don't have an identity. And I all of a sudden moved to this new school, and it was an English school, like British, and theater is a ginormous thing in English culture. And so I started taking theater classes there. And that was it. That was the moment that it like clicked for me, and sort of all this dark, heavy things sort of went away, and happiness in the sun came out again for me. And I
Mm.
Mm.
felt like I've sort of found again my footing and who I was, and sort of my group of people too, because I was always kind of awkward and I didn't do really well in school. I was kind of antisocial, and I was quite bullied when I was young, because I was clearly artistic and I didn't fit into like the sports world and stuff like swimming or cheerleading or those types of things. I was into really strange stuff, and I was heavily bullied my entire elementary years. And then I went to this school where there was a more artistic kids, and then I started doing musical theater, and I found my niche of people. I just like, oh, I found my crew, and there it started. But then I was thrown into sort of the second tier of my life, which was overnight fame and
Right. You
grieving.
you did this. Sorry, I don't know the name of it. Is it?
It was called Lola. It was like a
Oh,
soap
Lola.
opera where I
Okay.
played this I was like a Cinderella story, and I was like the nanny to these orphan family, and there was like an older brother and a bunch of kids, and I kind of fell in love with the brother, and that was kind of the story. And I sang and I toured, and it was like a wide search because it was a pretty big soap opera in Argentina, and they were remaking it in Mexico. But the Argentinian soap opera was ginormous. It was
Mm.
one
Mm.
of the most successful shows ever been made in Latin America. And so the search, as you know, when they're like redoing Gossip Girl, we're not like it carries weight. So the title itself, so the search was pretty wide, and I'd been 6 months into dropping out of school. I dropped out of school. I convinced my mother to
Yeah.
drop out
How
of
did that?
school.
I heard this. So how did that happen?
I brainwashed my mother. I don't know how. She says in a very beautiful way. I say it in like, I was a 12-year-old, very convinced. I was like, this is it. This is my life calling. And she says to the day, I find it hard to believe. I think it's more her desire to believe that I look so convinced about what I was doing. Like, I was like, this is my calling. I don't have to keep searching. I just want to jump right into it. But I think she really just saw me really happy. And she had seen a really
Mm.
sad kid for a very, very long time. And she was like,
Yeah.
fuck it. If this is gonna give my kid a life again, she just did it. I look back at it, and we talk about it quite a lot. And I'm like, why? How? Like I would never let my kid drop out of school. You're crazy.
Yeah.
I was 12. I was 12. And she was like, let's drop out. And she said, my mom was a really unconventional. Her life was quite unconventional. So I think that really helped. But she said, you're going to take this very seriously. Like, if we're going to do this, you're going to study. You're going to study and you're going to really prepare. And I said, okay, that's what your father would have wanted. He would have never wanted you to be an actress, but he would have wanted you to be disciplined about it. And I did. And I auditioned for this like acting school in Mexico. And you could only get there by auditioning. And it was like a dancing, the typical dancing, singing, da 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 da. And I got in, and I was the youngest one in my generation. I was turning, by the time I got in, I was like turning 14. And I got in the school, and I was there for short of a year. And this audition came around, and I started auditioning, and I didn't think anything of it. And I booked it, and I got
Wow.
it, and it happened. And it never stopped ever since.
Wow. That's incredible.
That is incredible. And it's weird how much it mirrors, it's so specific, and it mirrors so I dropped out of school at 12 and moved to LA.
Oh, wow.
But then at 14, well, just before my 14th birthday, I tried to go to a month of high school and then got a role that made the scheduling difficult. So then I actually dropped out of high school after about a month.
Oh, wow. Very
So
similar.
yeah. And my, I've been reflecting on it a lot recently and talking. I had to ask my mom in order to remember certain aspects of it. And what you said about your mother resonates a lot, because I think she had convention, just for whatever reason, just never worked for her, and our family kind of collapsed under the weight of it. So, taking an unconventional approach just seemed sensible, and
Yeah.
for me, I was also like struggling at that time, a lot of sadness and anxiety, and it was somehow this really crazy thing.
How did you feel when you were making those decisions? Like, because I remember in my mind, like, it strangely doesn't differ from how I think about things now. Like, and in the sense of the maturity.
Yeah,
Like,
I agree. No, I fully feel like that kid still, in
right?
a way.
Like,
I feel like
and
the
it
same
was
person.
just like quite pragmatic, even though
Yeah.
I think I hang out with 12-year-olds. And I mean, listen, 12-year-olds now are like, what, billion times smarter than all of us
I
combined.
know.
I cannot believe it. Like, these younger generations, and also they're so fearless. Like, I think for us, my story sounds fearless because our generation wasn't really curated to be that way. So like, there's like the few that kind of popped up, like, that really had and it really takes a village in the sense of people surrounding you, sort of supporting you, because you can want whatever you want if people around you are supporting you. But I do think that now these generations are like so fearless and so confident about their decisions that I don't even feel that way now. Like, I feel, shockingly, as I started saying, way more insecure or doubtful now than I did
Yeah.
then. And I guess it's ignorance is bliss, like, you could name it whatever it is, but it is really shocking to think how I would think back then, and with the lack of knowledge that I know now. And I think that's what I admire the most about how resilient I was, or that we can be, right?
Totally.
Like, just biologically,
Your
developmentally in your brain.
prefrontal lobe, yeah.
Yeah, you don't have that same inhibition. It's kind of like you were saying, ignorance is bliss, or like you don't know what you don't know. You aren't thinking through the consequences in the way
stupid.
that you would. Yeah, you're stupid.
That's what you're
Yeah.
saying. You're making bad
it
decisions.
is interesting. Like, how do you cultivate that now as an adult with the knowledge, with the inhibition? How do you still cultivate that same fearlessness?
Yeah.
Well, because you start developing self-awareness, right? With age. That's sort
Yeah.
of the most pivotal thing. You become self-aware. So now you're self-aware, but in the process of becoming self-aware, you are sacrificing certain things. And part of the sacrifice is this sort of nonchalant, ballsy mentality where you're just like, whatever. And I really genuinely, in the past few years, try to really focus to sort of reconnect to that version of myself, because you do become jaded with age. And I thought that would never happen. I remember thinking, even my mid-20s, when I was in the industry and I talked to people who are my age now, there was a lot of jadedness that really was like, I was like, damn, you're Debbie Downer. Like, and now I see myself and I catch myself sometimes being that. And I hate it and I don't like it. And because I used to be, and I've always been, kind of a rebel, and not in like the cool way, like a
I mean, it
rebel
sounds pretty
with,
cool. You were riding motorcycles at
it's
like
pretty
6 years
cool.
old. So I don't know. I mean, fair. I know
yeah.
it didn't feel cool, but it probably
Thanks.
looked pretty badass.
I
Is
think
what it
if you
sounds
guys say
like.
that I'm cool, I'll take it. But at the time, I wasn't cool, because the girls that were cool were like, going to Abercrombie and Fitch and buying like limited two. And I was just like out there and dirty in a motorcycle, and girls were like, ew. Like, I was definitely not
Yeah.
the conventional what it was at the time. And
Hmm.
I really like think about kids a lot, because, that does feel like the end of the world at the time. It does. It does. And it makes me really like empathetic, and I'm very emotional. I'm a very emotional like, I'll see something and I'll cry. Like, I cry for other people constantly. And
Hmm.
I just wear my heart on my sleeve quite a lot in that sense. And so I think about like kids nowadays growing up in this world, and it makes me really sad. It makes me really emotional, because I feel like, damn, I feel pressure by like social media, and I see these things, and it
Hmm.
makes me insecure to the bone. I'm 35. I'm 35. I'm 25. And it just, I go, I would break. I don't know if I could do it. I admire these newer generations so much.
Meet JLab. Headphones as versatile as you. You can work out, you can rock out, you can tune out, actually, if you need to. Sometimes it's necessary. Find the perfect fit with JLab. JLab's diverse collection of headphones has something for everyone in every moment. You can think headphones in a million different colors and styles with features you actually want for working out, chilling out, or jamming out. For travel, I use the Epic Lux ANC over-ear headphones, and they're really comfortable and they're sleek. They look pretty sexy. They have the longest active noise canceling plates I'm out there, clocking in at over 60 hours. And, I do travel a lot for work. And these are perfect on the plane, the LA to New York cross-country flights. I can catch up on podcasts I want, which is typically this one. I just listen to my own voice on repeat. And these, no, that's not true. These are great for movies. It's so good on a flight. I don't have to crank the volume to drown out my snoring neighbor or the sound of the plane's engine. So if you want a more open experience, not noise canceling, where you can hear your surroundings and still listen, you should check out JLab's Flex Open and JBud's Open Sports Styles. Look for the blue box at retailers everywhere, or shop jlab.com and use code PODCRUSHED for 15% off your order today.
Asa, I'm curious. We talked a little bit about your mom, and your relationship with her seems so sweet and so close, from what I can tell. Like, she usually comes with you on your press tours, and the little clips I've seen have been so sweet. And I'm curious now, as a mom myself, and having a close relationship with my mom, I think a lot about like, what are the little things, like what are the best practices, what are the things that create that close relationship. And I'm curious if you can think, looking back, and pin down anything specific. Of course there's so much, but are there
Yeah.
any small things that you can think of?
My mother was, so my mom's from the border. And that, I don't know if that means anything in America, but in Mexico, if you're a woman who grew up in the border, you're like ballsy. You're cut from a different scissor. You are, my mom grew up in in a very heavy, like, narco city. It, like, really dire, rough. She's one out of 8 brothers and sisters, no money, 0 money, shared a 3-bedroom with 10 family members. And she was sort of the only one that really got out. And when you have a mother, and she's self-made. And so my the church of my mother, you know, the church of Glenda, I call it, is a no bullshit zone. I am so grateful when you're young and you grew up in the industry, and it's easy to become a monster because you're sort of a product. So people want to keep the product happy, so the product keeps providing. And there's a lot of yes people around. And when you have a mother from Sonora, where she's from, there's no yeses. There's no yeses. It's a lot of harsh honesty, but with a lot of love. And so my mom was just always sort of, I mean, what you see is what you get. And so, but at the same time, you know, my mom was my best friend. I had conversations with her in a way that I really want to like hone on to throughout my life, where this is a really funny story. I walked into them having sex when I was like probably 9 or 10.
Mhm.
I used to at night want to go and hang out with my parents, and you know when your kids want to sleep with you. And I
Mhm.
used to do it quite a lot. And then my parents had like it feels like a ginormous bed now. It probably wasn't as big, but it was like a Cali King. And my dad was sort of by the door always. So I'd always go in and my dad would always kind of lift the
Mm.
bedding and let me hide under. And then
That's
like
so
an hour
cute.
later, my mom was like, to your bed. And I would walk out. So I do it for years. And one time I walked in and having sex. And I was I was I was terrified. I was like shocked. I was like, I thought he was hurting her. I
Yeah.
didn't know what had happened. I thought he was hurting. I thought he was hurting. And so I ran back to my room and covered myself. And, you know, I think that I kind of sort of understood, but I really didn't understand what it was. And then the next day, my dad would have never had this conversation with me, you know. But my mom came in and I really that moment is so ingrained in my brain because I think that's the place where my never-ending relationship with my mother started, where she just sat down and like laid it on me. And I was like 9. She's like, sex is this, sex is that. This is there was no like the babies are making it was just like it's pleasurable, it's this, it's that. I'm 9 years old. And it was so transparent and so real. There was no like beating around the bush. And from there on, I built a relationship with my mother of a best friend. And so my mom knew my first time ever having sex. My mom knows every single time I've like had a relationship, had, you know, and then we get to the point where like obviously become a woman and I'm in my 20s and 30s. And I just have never been shy around my mother. And I've always been able to have real honest conversations. And that really helped me throughout my phase of being famous because I never tried drugs. I never did anything because I felt so understood by my mother. I didn't need to escape. I think that it was in such a pivotal moment of my life where I became a woman and I sort of started to discover nightlife, drugs, alcohol abuse, whatever you could imagine, right? Sex. And she would always have a really, like, I was talking to my best friend, conversations, no shying away from anything that I never felt like rebelling. I never
Mm.
felt like breaking the law. I never felt like pushing the boundaries. And she'd be like, "You want to try it? Let's try it." Like, and I'd be like, "Oh, I don't really want to." And then I would have conversations like the first time I saw someone do coke in my life, I was pretty young, and I was like at a party that I shouldn't have been. And I came back to her, and it was someone that she knew actually. And I had this conversation with her, and she walked me through everything. We Googled it. She showed me what it was. I was like 13. She
Mm.
said, "This
Wow.
is this drug. This is what it does. This is sort of the aftermath. It could make you feel really good." Like that was always my conversations with my mother. So I don't know. I don't know anything else. That's all I've known because that's how I grew
Mhm.
up. I just know that that really worked for me, and it really helped me to sort of, in a world of discombobulation and chaos, of grief, work, dealing with public, you know, complete exposure, dealing with issues with my body, understanding my womanhood. I had a ginormous best friend in the process. So I forever want to sort of follow that, the Church of Glenda, I call
The
it.
Church of Glenda. I have one more question about Glenda. I'm curious to know if after your father passed away, if there was anything that your mom did to sort of continue to cultivate your relationship with him, like any traditions or any, I don't know why that question
It
came
was
to me, but I
really
was curious.
complicated for me. It was
Mm.
really complicated for me because I lost faith. We are very
Mm.
religious. I'm from Mexico, so you can imagine, like, it's
Yeah.
a very pivotal and poignant part of the culture. You know, church every Sunday, praying every night, thanking God and saying grace before dinner. And I just lost complete faith. I
Mm-hmm.
just detested the church. I didn't believe in anything good because, you know, my dad was, and you know, I a lot of people would think this, but my dad, about their own parents, but my dad was a really good man. Like my mom says, like, I'm not even a quarter of the man he was. Like, he
Mm.
was a good father, like a good, like, to the core,
Mm.
sweet, thoughtful, always thought of other people. He was like Mother Mary, like, he cared about animals so much. He cared
Mm.
about people so much. And I just couldn't connect um the unfairness of him dying. I just was like, from all the fucking shitty people in the world, him, like, it made me not believe in anything bigger. I just was like,
Yeah.
there's no way that there's something bigger than this, because it's like the way that I feel when, like, children get sick. That within itself makes me not believe in anything. And so
Mm-hmm.
I lost faith completely. And I had a real hard realization of my dynamic with my father. I wasn't able to cry for 4 years.
Wow.
4 to 5 years, I didn't
Mm.
cry at all. And I was just in complete and utter denial. And simultaneously, I'd started my career and I needed to cry a lot for work. And it was really, really, really where I just, like, it was the hardest thing funny enough, I've ever done in my life. Like, reconnect. It's sort of something died in me. And I just completely removed myself from my father. Like, I just couldn't, it was so
Mm-hmm.
unbearable that I just sort of walked away completely. And so
Yeah.
Mm.
I didn't have any of his stuff. I didn't read anything, nothing, zero. And, you know, it was a really tough time, I think, in that sense, because I sort of, you know, I dove into work, and my complete sense of, I went into fight or flight mode. I was in survival mode constantly, constantly, constantly. And I couldn't look back. And it comes with amazing stuff and horrible stuff. Like,
Yeah.
I disconnected so much from my father, but it allowed me to sort of create an identity of my own, because so much of my identity was my father. We were like this. Like, my mom doesn't really exist before that, because my
Mm.
mom was the
Wow.
breadwinner in the house. So he would pick me up from school. He would
Oh,
take me to,
interesting.
he
Yeah.
would do the homework with me. He would take me to this. So my relationship was like me and my dad, and my mom did not exist. And
Mm.
my mom, in some very profound way, says that life has God, has a reason for that. And there's a reason why those 12 years of my life were completely devoted to him, because I was never going to have him again. And then she was going to have
Mm.
me for the rest of the life. And so she really, yeah, and she really sees it in a way. But I'm just, yeah, it was really challenging. And then I had my own personal sort of reconnection with him. And took me, I mean, really took me years. It took me
Mm-hmm.
years, because I escaped from it really badly. I really
Mm-hmm.
escaped from it.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that.
That's
That
incredible.
what your mom
Yeah.
said is so sweet.
You're sweet. But yeah, it is really, it's fascinating. I don't think people talk a lot about, I think humans go through the most hard time and the most vulnerable time of their lives. Like, life design is so fascinating to me, because it gives the hardest moments of their lives and the most fragile moments of their lives. I think children live the hardest things. If I compare, and I speak to a lot of friends of mine, or maybe it's in the industry, I mean, I don't know, but you compare, like, the sort of resilience that children have to have with the access of emotions that they have, And it's so much more complex that when an adult has to go through. And
Mm.
when you're an adult, you have a brain that fully functions to kind of deal with something. But somehow puberty happens in the hardest moment of your like development. And so that is the hardest. It's the birth of a human. It's your identity. It's
Yeah.
the birth of your identity happens there. That is who you're going to be for the rest of your life. It's crazy to think about. And so
Mm.
I always sort of, I love Lauren, Aaron Paul's wife, who's in the movie with me. And she dedicates herself to kind of go, she has this amazing foundation that dedicates to help children in school and bullying. And that's where I actually connected with Aaron Paul for this movie
Mm.
before becoming friends, is I was a fan of Lauren's work because as a child that I went through a lot of bullying, I've always wanted to be able to help in that space because I knew how that felt like. And it felt like life or death to me. It really did. It didn't, nothing right now feels life or death to me. In that
Mm.
time, it did. And it
Yeah.
really makes me so emotional to think about it too, because you don't have the knowledge, the emotional access to sort of navigate this. And yeah, I've always sort of thought of the paradox of what that means. Of the most tender moments of your life involve the most definitive moments of your life.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's so true. That's well said as well. And thank you for being so open and sharing so much about it.
Right.
I feel like, I know we only have you for 50 minutes or so. I wanna just be mindful of time and move now into your career. I know you're promoting Ash right now. So maybe we can just lead up to that a bit. So I'm gonna talk about Three Body Problem just a little.
Yeah.
That must have, it must have been the biggest, because I remember when I saw it, I watched, and I don't watch a lot of television. I watched it with my stepson. I think whenever it came out. So it was 2
Like
years
a year and
ago.
a half
Was
ago?
it a
Right?
year and a half ago?
Yeah.
Yeah. So he was like 14 or 15. We both loved it in our own way. And like one of the things I kept reflecting on, apart from the intensely compelling mystery of it and really wanting to figure out what was going on, as a person who worked in television, I was like, the frigging budget on this thing must
Oh,
be
insane.
massive. I was like, where is this what is this show? Why is it so? I know how much this costs. I am
Yeah.
blown away.
Yeah.
And so it must have been the biggest production you were a part of. It would have been the biggest production anybody would have been a part of, I feel like.
Yeah. But you know what? It didn't feel that way, which was quite
Mm.
That's
nice
interesting.
because it's interesting when you're part of those things. I think it puts a lot of pressure. Like I
Yeah.
remember when I was like in Godzilla versus Kong, I was like, whoa, the
Mm.
pressure of this is jarring. I mean, it was like in your face, like the
Yeah,
set,
yeah.
the money. I was like, whoa. I had never been part of like a franchise on that extent. And somehow, of course, we knew that Three Body Problem was that because obviously Dan and Dave were coming from Game of Thrones. And who, for people that don't know, are the showrunners and creators of Game of Thrones, and so are they for the Three Body Problem. And I knew that there was a lot of expectation, a lot of pressure on them. I knew, there was a lot of pressure on us and a lot of pressure from Netflix to make this incredible show. And so at the beginning, it was jarring, sort of the sense of the how grandiose this was. But once I do this thing where like once I get into whatever the character is, I sort of forget about everything else. I'm just so in the mental space of I don't want to lose any minute or second that I have on set overthinking something that I'm going to look back and be like, why was I thinking about something else when I should have been focused on the
Yeah,
scene?
yeah.
And so, and then it really helped that they're amazing. They're like family to me. They're like my best friends. They were really fun. They've been so supportive with me throughout my career. And I had a blast, but I really love the books.
Mm.
And the second and third season are the last two books. And if you thought that looked like a lot of budget, you wait for this part because this is sort of if people are familiar with the books, it sort of move. The show starts in the Chinese Revolution and it moves a billion years ahead of time. So we move a billion years as the show goes
Do you
by.
mean you don't mean a billion as like a euphemism for a lot of time? You mean
No,
a
like
billion years?
like actually,
I, all
because it's
right.
all about like what's in the other world. And so,
Right,
as
right,
we know,
right.
we leave it in the staircase project, and God knows what happens with the staircase project, but it's very interesting. So I'm very excited. We're starting to shoot the second and third season soon. So
Oh my gosh,
very excited.
exciting. My
Wow.
husband
Yeah.
and I notoriously cannot agree on anything to watch, but we both watched together and loved The Three Body Problem. So
Oh, I'm
thank you.
glad you did. Well, if you liked the first season, you will really like the second and third, I believe.
Good. I can't wait.
Yeah, the source
It's
material is pretty spectacular.
I heard that you hesitated taking the role at first. What convinced you?
Three
in the
body
end?
problem.
Yeah.
Yes, I did. I did hesitate for a second. I basically was terrified. I have commitment issues. I have really bad commitment issues. And it was going to take a year of my life to go shoot that show. We shot 12 months.
Wow.
And it was, yeah, and it was, the first season, I was like not really happy with Augie. I didn't love her. I was not really convinced. And it really, I had real issues with her. But then somehow, weirdly enough, I thought that was what caused me to do it, because I sort of didn't agree with a lot of things. And I was like, maybe I just have to take a leap of faith, and not everything that I know is what's right. And I want to and these are amazing writers, and I like the way they work. Where like one season you hate someone, the next season you love someone, then someone's the best person on earth, then they kill them. And then I just thought, when they started pitching me sort of the broad idea of her journey, I was like, okay, I think I can do it. And it was tough for me. It was tough for me to like buckle down for 12 months and not, because I love working. If you look, I mean, I have probably like 5 movies coming out this year because I work back to back to
Yeah,
back
I was
to
gonna
back to
say
back.
when we were looking, like researching, is she like one of the most prolific people we've interviewed? Like so
I'm
many
just a
projects.
hustler. I'm Mexican, honey. It's like it's in my blood. I'm a hustler.
Yeah.
And I come from that school of soap operas. Like you just overworked and
yeah.
overtired, but there, and I kind of function my best in that space. I don't recommend it, but I definitely, and so I like it. And I think I'm still in the state of I can't believe I get to do this. So I'm like, when I get like someone like Guy Ritchie offering me my second or third movie, I'm like, how am I going to say no? Like, I guess I have to learn how to say no, maybe. And I'm trying to exercise that now, because it really moving towards where I am. It becomes, doing the right job is way more meaningful than just doing a lot of jobs. But I lived in the industry when minorities weren't getting any opportunities. So once you got an opportunity, you jumped into it. It's like there was a few roles for us a year, if there was any. And so I think that sort of lingered with me. And I thought I had to keep working every time I had a job. And I'm not saying that I haven't chosen the right jobs. I feel like I have. But my sense of sort of decision making has changed in the last few years, that I feel way more comfortable owning who I am, and that I deserve to be here, and that I can take up space. I used to think I didn't deserve it. And that, I do think there's a sense of, if you look at the amount of work that some of like diverse actors do, and the amount of like recognition or attention that they get is not similar. And you really have to work 10 times more to be acknowledged sometimes. And I don't look at it as a victim in the sense that, oh, for me, I'm not saying it in that way. I'm just saying, I'm like, let's go. I'm game. You want me to work my ass off? I will do it. I will show up, and I'll be prepared. And I sort of always had that hustler mentality, but I'm getting older, so I got to slow down a bit more.
25 though, I thought. No.
Yeah, 25, exactly. I'm so
Well,
young.
listen,
still.
it really slows down in your late 20s.
Yeah, I can't wait. I'm eager to
Can
get
tell ya.
there. I heard.
So speaking of, making the right decisions, doing projects you love, I mean, tell us about Ash. I wasn't able to finish it, but I got far enough that I was like, what on earth or what on
not on Earth.
What not
on Earth.
42, whatever it is. I mean, it's a really compelling premise. It's also for a lot of it, it's just you, and for a lot of it, it's just you and Aaron Paul. Tell us a bit about it, especially for our listeners who don't know anything.
Yeah, so Ash is, it's so hard, as you've seen. It's really hard to sort of pitch the movie without spoiling or misdirect. It's not a sci-fi, right? It's not necessarily a sci-fi in the sense of you think of Interstellar as a sci-fi or Blade Runner as a sci-fi. It's a survival slasher, off the wall sci-fi horror movie. And how this came about is I was doing this movie at the time called The Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare with Guy Ritchie, and it was like so fun, and it was about World War II, and it was a complete different premise, and I was doing sort of a very different role, and I was itching for horror, and I told my team, if anything interesting comes around, I really want to like dive into horror. I feel like it's a very raw place for an actor to go, and by the way, I still think they don't get enough credit, because after I did this movie, I'm like, holy cow, this is like the marathon of filming. Like, it takes so much stamina and energy and focus.
You're constantly with like your cortisol high and
your cortisol, your adrenaline. You really have to be constantly recalibrating yourself. And I just remember reading the script, and I had heard that Aaron Paul has gotten it. And Aaron is one of my best friends for like 10 years. And so I like grabbed my phone. And by the time I grabbed my phone, I had a message from Aaron. He's like, have you read it? What do you think? I would love. And we've been wanting to work together. And I was like, I'm going to read it tonight. I'll tell you. And so we were going back and forth. He was going to meet with Flying Lotus. I was going to meet with him as well. And once we met with Flying Lotus, you know, the script, the premise was interesting. But
wait a second. I did not realize this is Flying Lotus. That makes so much sense. It makes so much more sense now.
Yes. So
because also I haven't gotten the payoff of the end, and there's clearly, because also the body horror stuff. Like I was like, this is real specific. It is so Flying Lotus.
It's so Flying Lotus, and of course he made all the music. And if people are familiar with Flying Lotus, he's a music producer and a DJ, and he's a protege. He's incredibly smart.
He's prolific. He's like a visionary.
Visionary.
He has this one record. God, I can't. I think it's called. Is it called You're Dead?
I think so. Yes.
Where he first started as far as I understand, like first really putting this horror cinema spin into his music. That may or may not be true. He may have done it way earlier.
It is. And it has a bit of sci-fi in it too.
Yeah, it does. And it has one of the best Kendrick verses. As a Kendrick fan, it actually has seriously one of the best Kendrick verses, I think.
And he just was like, the way that you're speaking about him was the way that I sort of, my encounter with him was. I met with him, and, you know, this is a small budget movie. I don't know what you think after watching it. We made it for like
so knowing I have a good eye, like I could tell, and not in a way that is bad. I was
but because you're an actor and you know.
I can tell.
I'm not an actor, and I couldn't tell. Yeah, when I heard it was an indie movie, I was like, what?
and the thing is, these movies take creative point of view. Like, it's an independent film. You're taking a swing. It's a genre that has somehow sort of been made before, but in a different way. And it needs a strong point of view. It needs a strong creative point of view and a vision. And once we both sat with him, it was mind-boggling. He had everything. Like, we've met throughout our careers, directors that really make it over the crossing lines, and people that don't. They have desire. You work with really good ones, you work with not such great ones. And I was just I was like, wow. I was kind of having a conversation with a veteran that didn't realize he was a veteran. Like, he was already thinking about so many things that a director well experienced would have known, and not someone that this is like their actual, like, technically their first movie. I mean, he did Kuzo, but this is like the first real movie.
Right.
And I just was like, this is a no-brainer. And whatever the outcome this is going to be a cool movie. And wait till you get to because the payoff is pretty pretty
Yeah,
amazing.
I'm actually going to keep watching it, which with screeners for podcasts, let me tell you, I do not do.
Yeah, you should. It's fun, and you know what it is really exciting for me is that it's going to theaters because it is a movie made for theaters. I think
Yeah,
horror
yeah.
is one of the most fun genres to go see in movie theaters because it's a collective experience. I remember I went to go watch Get Out in Times Square in New York
Mm.
City. When I tell you that was the best experience I've ever had
Oh my
of a
gosh.
film I've ever. The people were screaming at the screen. People were like clawing other people on the chairs. It was so fun. It's just like an exhilarating experience, and I love hearing the gasps in movie theaters. And it's so spectacularly beautiful that
Mm.
it just deserves it. And so, yeah, it was a no brainer. We did it. It's a crazy movie. It's off the wall. And
Yes.
Flying Lotus and I from the get-go, immediately I was like, you know what this reminds me, because I was talking to him and he's like, what do you think? I said, you know what this reminds me of? And he's like, what? I'm like, Silent Hill. He's like, it's you. You have to do this movie. You understand it. Because it's like I played video games growing up. I was really into Silent Hill. And I played all the Silent Hills, like all the Resident Evils, but
Whoa.
I was more
Can
of
I
a
ask how
Silent.
old you were when you started playing them?
I was really young because my
'Cause
brother
they're
was the one
scary.
that started. So I started probably, wow, 8, 9.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
really
Those
young.
are scary. Those are
Scary.
legit
And
scary.
I
I don't
remember
like
being
playing them.
like shivering with my brother because he
Yeah.
would watch it and I'd still play and I'd be like,
They're
and he was such a
terrifying.
bully. He would turn off all the lights in the room and I'd be like,
Wow.
because my love started with Zelda.
Mhm.
Oh, me too. You mean the Ocarina of Time?
The Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask.
Oh, those are the two of the best video games
The
ever.
best
Like,
video games of all
absolutely.
time. I
Yeah.
played Majora's Mask and Zelda, Ocarina of Time, probably 40 times. I still have my
Oh.
Nintendo 64 and I still connect it to my house. I love it. And I don't think they ever did a Zelda like that ever again after that, by
No,
the way.
no, they
The
didn't.
visuals
No.
changed, the graphics changed. I didn't like it. I'm a 64 Zelda girl forever.
Just the picture of you at 12 is building, or like 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, is building more and more as we get through this episode. I love it.
I know.
Now you
right?
understand. You're like, oh, I see this girl.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
see it.
yeah.
Well, I'm also realizing. So first of all, I know we're about to lose you. So what we typically have is a final question, which is going back to 12. But I'm also realizing, Sophie, we didn't do our classic questions about
I
a
know.
crush and an embarrassing story. Can you just very quickly, if
Yes.
you have the time,
Yes.
tell us a quick story about either an embarrassing one or a crush, first crush.
Oh.
Middle school-ish.
If there's something that describes me in a nutshell as my actual first thing that I ever loved as a child, like when I was a kid and I was in love, I had 2 massive crushes. One was Jack Skellington. That was like my main man. And the other one was Jafar from Aladdin.
Oh, Jafar. Yeah.
I
You
do
liked
feel
Jafar?
like that's a thing.
I was in.
Oh, man.
I had tingles in my body when I watched Aladdin. And everyone would think it'd be Aladdin, but it wasn't. I was in love with Jafar. And I think that says a lot about my mind. Those
Wait,
two
who's Jack
really-
Skellington? Is that from Nightmare Before Christmas?
The Nightmare Before Christmas.
Oh,
Wait,
interesting.
that's
Okay.
amazing.
Those
The
were my
cartoon
crushes, you
character.
guys.
So you like a lanky, halfway evil
Yeah.
guy.
Skinny,
Okay.
bony man.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
A bony dead man and
Yeah, right.
an evil, completely weird, also creepy because he was really old.
Yeah. No.
Not the
way
daddy issues coming through.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so funny.
Well, it's forgivable. Okay, so our last question is, if you could go back to 12-year-old Eiza, what would you say or do?
I've thought of this a lot of times. And I think well, first of all, a constant question that I get asked is would you change anything? If you had the chance to change anything. In a weird way, I wouldn't. Because everything that I've gone through, the really horrible stuff and the really amazing stuff that has happened in my life has really made me I feel very proud of who I am. I really do. It's taken a lot of work, and it's taken a lot of pain, and I wouldn't change, like, I would have it happen exactly all identical the same way. I would change nothing. And I would just say, trust yourself more. Be more confident in yourself. I really struggle with my confidence a lot, and I've done through it through many years, and from the little girl to now. And I just would remind myself, trust yourself, be confident in yourself. And I think that's probably why I admire young like boys and girls now. Like, they're so confident, and I feel like I always lack that. I have earnesty, but I lack confidence. And I would just, and I still remind myself to kind of think that way.
Mm.
Beautiful.
Well, thank
you, Eiza,
Thank
so
you,
much
Sue.
for
Thank
coming
you
on.
guys. It was so fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, really appreciate you making the time.
Of course. Have a wonderful
you.
time, and hopefully I get to meet you guys in person.
That'd be
Yeah,
lovely.
yeah, that'd be great.
Thank you.
Thank you guys.
Bye.
You can watch Ash now in theaters or on Prime Video, and you can follow Eiza online at Eiza González. Podcrushed is hosted by Penn Badgley, Nava Kavalin, and Sophie Ansari. Our senior producer is David Ansari, and our editing is done by Clips Agency. Special thanks to the folks at Lemonada. And as always, you can listen to Podcrushed ad-free on Amazon Music with your Prime membership. Okay, that's all. Bye.